Right, it's 11 o'clock, so welcome everybody. So I'm just going to share a slightly different screen just for one moment for anyone who hasn't seen it already. So we're going to be using the chat box quite a lot. This is what the chat box looks like. It's a screenshot. And the thing that I want to draw your attention to is if you select all panelists and attendees, then your message will go to everybody. If you select all panelists, then your message comes directly to Mock and I. Okay, so that's a useful thing to know in terms of keeping the communication flowing. And for anyone who hasn't found the chat box yet, I'm just sending a quick hello, and you should receive a notification that has come up.
And in case anyone thinks I'm being rude, I may occasionally look down at my phone because I'm also receiving some text from people at the same time regarding this webinar. So please don't think I'm disengaging. I'm just engaging on another platform this morning.
There you go, and that's what we're talking about.
Yeah.
Great. So we've already started talking about this, but I'd love for you to share in the chat box why you're here today. It might be share what particular training you're looking to put online. It might be that you're working with customers and you want to work out how better to work with them in a virtual way. Yeah, put that in and we'll share some of the responses that we get. So Rosemary said, we're thinking of developing some training materials and online resources for teachers with schools currently closed. I think it's a brilliant idea. Yeah, really timely, I think. What do you see in there, Mark?
What face-to-face needs to be virtual. In my case, supplier meetings, all internal communications, and meeting new stakeholders. Yeah, absolutely. We've got from Jan, we do a lot of virtual training already, but interested in new ideas. Lovely, Jan.
Yeah.
Nice to see that. What else have we got?
Dog sharing is becoming more and more popular. I think I'd love to know more about that. Is there one in there?
There's one in the room.
Yeah.
Just want to go and show one. Hold on.
And Sue says, looking to see how I can use Zoom for training online. Absolutely, makes a lot. I mean, it's an obvious choice. And what you'll get from today, Sue, I hope, is that you'll see that there's more than just Zoom available, and you can create a sort of virtual blended approach. That's kind of what we're hoping to talk about today. Doing some performance management training for a client, great. I mean, that they're going to be doing performance management virtually, so actually delivering the training virtually will be useful. Elevate internal training webinars that already exist to be even more engaging. I think that's really good.
Yeah, what you already have.
Absolutely. Develop a webinar series for business support to make sure startups get what they need. Mm-hmm. Julie is a trainer and coach and really worked virtually before, so want to learn how to do it well. Yeah, I mean, I was talking to some people on the weekend who have older people in the community who've never really used technology. And we're creating a bit of an army locally, a small army, but an army nonetheless, of people who can support older people to get online. And I just realized, Julia, that I might be casting assumptions about you there, and I don't mean for it to come across that way.
Well, that's what you're doing, helping people get online. We're actually broadcasting church. You did that on Sunday, didn't you?
Yeah. Virtual conferencing, absolutely, Monica, yeah. And Claire's looking to improve virtual communication, more important than ever. Paula is coming to listen to some tips from us, so that's lovely, Paula, thank you. And Becky delivers innovation training and would like to give live feedback to help attendees improve. Brilliant. Great, so we've got a lot of comments come through, which is fantastic. Thank you all.
Can I pause this with the dog?
Yeah.
So one of the things about the fact that we're all getting a peek into each other's homes and our lives, I think this whole working remotely means that we're all being a little bit more human. I wonder how many people today may not be in a shirt, or may, when they're in a Zoom call, have a shirt and a tracksuit. I'm actually wearing a pair of smart trousers today. But we're seeing each other's lives, we're seeing each other's sitting rooms, our kitchens, our kids, and also our dogs. So let me introduce to you, this is one of the dogs. He's called Google, appropriately enough, for an innovation company. And he's just going to be sitting very quietly, but he's joining our WebEx today.
So it is, now there's a dog on camera, you have my full attention. There you go. Somebody was talking earlier about trying to avoid distractions. I think that's a legitimate distraction, don't you?
There's two more locked in the kitchen, believe me. They might be barking furiously by the end.
And Becky's got a chihuahua called Rudy. Rudy, probably. Yeah, great. And Nick's wearing, Nick, this is a fashion parade, fabulous. Nick's wearing smartest shirt and tracksuit bottoms. That's what I was doing yesterday, but today I've got Levi jeans. So, and yeah, absolutely, it's a distraction that provides focus. So I did a webinar last week or week before, I think, and I started it with a video of a panda sneezing. And it just brings people, I think you were on that webinar actually, weren't you? It really brings people into the moment and into the room. So yeah, thank you everyone for sharing. I think we're going to cover a lot of what you're looking for in the webinar today, so that's great. But of course, as we know, in recent weeks, we've seen that the way we deliver needs to change. But I'm going to suggest to you that it's not just because of COVID-19 and the current situation. When people started talking about digital a few weeks ago, we at the Innovation Beehive felt we were in a really strong position because we've been delivering virtually for quite some time, for a number of years. You know, one of the reasons why we feel that it's more important than ever is because business travel is costing an average of £750 per year per employee on average in the UK. And of course, a lot of us who work in, for example, us in professional services, ours is significantly higher than that because we're traveling a lot to meet with clients. And you know, if you're a consultant, if you're in supply chain, but you know, a lot of people are traveling a lot more than £750 worth of travel per year. And then there's the cost to employees themselves. The cost of commuting is £1,750 per year on average. And again, people commuting into London are often spending significantly more than that. But perhaps the most significant cost, and this is something that really was brought home to me in recent weeks when I started doing some research, and when I saw things like the pollution factors above Wuhan significantly reducing as there was less happening in the city, and the same with Italy. So over the last 10 years or so, there has been a steady increase in the number of organizations looking to reduce their carbon emissions. And on the screen now, we've got a graph from a global major professional services firm, which has managed to reduce its carbon footprint by almost 40%. That's the top line, the line that's been in decline. Now, if you look at the line underneath, that is the carbon footprint of their business travel. And you can see that it has remained basically stagnant since 2007. There's been a dip in 2010, which of course can be linked to the financial crash. But actually, business travel just wasn't even on the radar for organizations in terms of carbon footprint. It just seemed like something that had to be done. And now I think we've woken up to the fact that perhaps it doesn't have to be done because people are working effectively from home or learning how to work effectively from home. And I think as you know, particularly in terms of L&D and you know, working directly with clients, perhaps we need to get smarter about how we do that to save cost, to save time, and to do our bit for the environment. So that's kind of why, as well as the immediate need, why I'm really excited to be able to share with you our perspective on how to take training and take customer journeys and turn them digital and virtual. So we've got 45 minutes together, 40 minutes now, and that's why there's not much on the agenda, or what looks like not much on the agenda, but the value that's going to come from it is hopefully very significant. We're going to look at the tools of virtual delivery. Now, there's another webinar that we did a couple of weeks ago that goes into these in a bit more detail. So we're going to spend a very small amount of time on those, just enough to get a sense of them, because knowing what tools are available is really important for the next stage, which is creating the virtual journey. And then we'll look at some next steps. So before we get into that, can you share with me, again, share with us all actually, all panelists and attendees, if you select that option, what are some of the challenges of virtual delivery that you see or that you've maybe encountered or that you're concerned about? So just type them in the chat box and we'll have a little discussion about those. People contributing, absolutely, Becky. And well done for getting in first with that comment.
How to make it interactive. Oh gosh, loads coming. Yeah, how to make it interactive and fully engaging. Engagement and the quality of the content, engaging clients in the idea. Ish, that's interesting. Are you working in innovation? Is that do you mean innovative ideas or other ideas? Lack of feedback from audience, absolutely, Nick. And engagement is one of the ways you can gauge how engaged people are. Whereas in a room you can read faces, etc. It is a challenge, absolutely. Distractions like email, absolutely. And there's all sorts of contracting that you can do, particularly if you're working with an internal team. And actually, we've got a webinar on that as well. So I keep referring to these other webinars we've done. There's recordings of them. I'll be sure to put all of those in the follow-up email to this webinar. And they're on our YouTube page.
Yeah, and they are as well, absolutely. Just look for the Innovation Beehive on YouTube. Technology that doesn't work that well, absolutely. We've had a bit of a panic this morning because the internet has been significantly slower than usual. So apologies if anybody struggles with with our connection, know that the recording is being done on our computers here, so the quality of the video will be sufficient. Technology is a big challenge, technology that doesn't work well. And then there's another piece to that as well, I think, which is when people who use technology don't know how to use it effectively. So for example, you'll have seen at the beginning of the webinar, I was quite careful to make sure that, as far as I can, to make sure that you all knew how to select panelists and attendees so that we could make the best of the communication available to us. Eddie has said corporate IT systems. Absolutely, Eddie. Now, Mock has a brilliant phrase, creativity loves constraints.
Yeah, actually, Google have what they call their 9 notions of innovation. And my favorite one, number 7, is creativity loves constraints. So you have to work within the constraints of what your IT, what your firewalls will allow. But I think it's really important to start the conversation now saying, these are the challenges I have. What tools do you have available? And there might be a whole lot of tools that you never knew were available within your organization. So for example, we have the Microsoft Office suite, and we've been buying project management tools and productivity tools and sharing tools, and found out actually during this time that so many of those tools already exist in a Microsoft Office version, and we're paying for them as part of our license fee. So we're actually going to cut some of the costs that we've been spending on all those tools and use what already exists in the organization. Can I also say that I think one of the interesting things around engagement and screen fatigue and knowing how things can be really sort of fun and interesting for delegates attending virtually is because a lot of virtual training has been done for real functional stuff. So talking to our clients, talking to a number of HR directors and learning directors over the last couple of weeks, they're telling me they do have some online capability, but it's mainly on teaching things like health and safety and getting people accredited to maybe go onto a construction site, or maybe someone has to do some legislation before they can start doing a financial trade or something like that. But it's really very basic, very broadcast, and so they're concerned that they don't have the way of engaging people, which is something Joe and I are going to talk a little bit about today. Yeah. So where we've come from in terms of as a world around how we tend to use online training is not where we are headed.
Absolutely. Yeah, and just on that, a couple of people have mentioned people being stuck in their ways. And one thing that I think we can all recognize is that I think the vast majority of people who were stuck in their ways are suddenly realizing that they simply can't be anymore because of the current situation. And I think those of us who are more engaged with digital and virtual delivery, I think we can almost become evangelists for it at the end of this, so that people don't just get back to their old set ways of doing things.
Because I think there's been some perception that digital, doing something online, somehow is second rate, it's second class, and isn't as good as in the room. And you know, we're joined here by Gordon Simpson from Menzies, and we've been working with Menzies for a number of years now. One of the areas we're working on is leadership development, and we've had a working party with delegates from America, delegates from South Africa, delegates from Australia, and we have held online virtual working party meeting, idea generation sessions, brought all of their ideas and content together, and not continue to fly them over to Edinburgh all the time. There are some real ways of doing this differently and using online to help us get more engagement from people and save the planet, as Joe said at the beginning.
And I'm seeing there's a great little conversation that's happened between Nick and Graham on here about people being able to learn from each other as well as learning from the facilitators. Absolutely. This is one of the reasons why I really asked if you could find it to change to all panelists and attendees, precisely so that you can connect with each other, share back to one another, and engage with each other as well as with us. You know, I'm sure if any of you have used Zoom before, particularly for meetings rather than webinars, you'll know that you can have breakout rooms. There are challenges with that, of course, but you know, it's working out how we can use the technology effectively and being creative in our thinking around that. And also, sorry, just one other point on that, and also thinking about not just using one tool when it comes to creating that sense of working together and collaborating. And I think that's we're going to.
I was going to say, Graham's made a point about getting kind of, I can't actually see it now, but a point about kind of engaging people and getting feedback from people. And I think actually putting people in, delegates seeing, learning, inspiring each other as opposed to the facilitators, I think actually using the breakout rooms is a really good way of doing that.
Yeah, and it's and the great thing is, of course, in a digital world, it's not the only way of doing it. So look, thank you for all of those comments. And what I'm going to do is take these comments and I'll create a little document about them. I won't name any of you. It'll be sort of anonymized. I might put them on a blog on our website, and I'll share that with this group as well, so that you can see and reflect back on what are some of the challenges that people are facing. But actually, these challenges that you're talking about are actually opportunities, and they are touch points on the learner journey or on your customer's journey. And hold those in the back of your mind and put them to one side for a moment, because we're going to come back to them. But before we do that, I just want to introduce you to some of the tools that are available to us. And it's by no means all of the tools that are available. These are just some of the ones that we've been using to great effect over the last few years at the Innovation Beehive. And as I say, there's a webinar about these, and I've also got a PDF which gives some tips on how to use them effectively. The key thing is that these are available. A lot of them are free to use. A lot of them your people are using already. So it's just a case of engaging them to use them as part of the team, or as part of the learning cohort, or as part of the community that you're forming. So you've got virtual meetings, you've got webinars like this, you've got WhatsApp and instant messenger apps, and Office 365 has its own version of that, as does the Google Suite. You've got videos, which can be really powerful and engaging to share, to keep a sense of engagement and momentum. It's great content to share, same with podcasts.
And you can set up your own YouTube page or use Vimeo. If you want to share a video and it's private, you can make it password protected. You can put videos up on YouTube in a way that only people who have the link can view them, so you can keep confidential information there as well.
Rosemary's just asked, how do we get hold of that tools webinar? I'll send you a link after this session later this afternoon with various links to various resources that you'll be able to use. Does Office 365 have a webinar option? It certainly, Alex, it certainly has a meetings option. I don't know.
In Teams, you can hold meetings.
Yeah.
But I think actually the time of Zoom has come. I saw this morning that Zoom is now worth double what it was when it was IPO'd a year ago. We've been using it for about 18 months now. $29 billion. It's absolutely thriving during this, as more and more people get on Zoom and recognize it.
And actually, you can hold events on Teams, so that's great. Yeah, brilliant.
And you can use Teams external to your organization. There was a question about that. Mm-hmm. Yes, absolutely you can, as long as people have an email address. There's also Google Hangouts, which are great as well, and you can record those, but you do need a Gmail account to be able to attend.
Absolutely. And the reason I put all of these tools on here is, one is stimulus for you to think about not just holding a webinar to deliver training, but actually think, what else can I offer people to help land the learning outcomes that I'm looking for, or if I'm managing a team, what else can I share with people to keep them engaged in their work, in the organization's purpose, and in their day-to-day jobs when they're actually working from home, and all of the other potential challenges that we're all thinking about at the moment. Okay, Lindsay, can you say a bit about online surveys? Absolutely. So the reason we use online surveys, there's a couple of reasons. One is because one of our values at the Innovation Beehive is we love our clients. So we use online surveys as a way of getting feedback. So, as most of us probably do in terms of evaluating learning interventions. So that's one way. But actually, we also use them as part of our training. So it can be really helpful you ask the right question and you can help people in their learning, because if you ask a stimulating, thoughtful question, people's responses are a form of learning in themselves. So, for example, we have a tool on our website called the Innovators Profile. And at the end of that, people receive a personalized report that gives them a sort of personality test, effectively, on what is their innovation thinking preference. So where do they feel most comfortable when working on innovation? The other thing that we use online surveys for is when it comes to prototyping and testing ideas, you can actually do that virtually by using really well put together surveys alongside other resources like videos and PDFs. And slideshows.
There's a question coming from Becky, actually, I'd like to answer. Do you have any thoughts, opinions on online digital insight? Is that about insight gathering? So there are specific tools actually out there for insight gathering, and if you want to Google them, they'll come up. But actually, even we were doing a project a couple of years ago for a very large car manufacturing organization. We developed their employee value proposition, their employee brand, and we sent out, we have SurveyMonkey Gold, which means we can brand it for our clients. So we sent it out in their branding and just asked people to answer a couple of questions, and then gave a box for free text as well, a bit like an employee opinion survey. But what we were able to do, when all the information came back, we looked and created kind of almost like word clouds of the amount of times that words started to be repeated by delegates when they were filling in their survey. Now, a lot of them were they and of, etc. But once you filter that out, we started to see a pattern of about 16 different words, quite emotional words and verbs and descriptors, adjectives. We were able then to say there's some springiness to this. This starts to reveal what people think and feel about the employee brand. And that was all done digitally, and we were able to get feedback from over 4,000 people. And actually the cost and the time, if we were to gather insights actually through normal either group focus groups or through telephone calls, would just be too expensive for a client. So even way before this, there were tools available through things like SurveyMonkey to gather insights. You have to work a little bit harder to try and see the thread through them, but they're there.
Yeah. Absolutely. And Alex has just asked, what is your preferred digital creativity tool? Well, Alex, I'm a sort of amateur self-trained graphic designer, so I use Adobe Creative Cloud. But as I'm sure you're aware, there's tons of apps and things out there on the App Store that you can use. Just find the one that works for you. Really, it's a matter of personal preference. The other one I use a lot of is Canva. So there's all sorts out there. And as I say, we've got a webinar which goes into this in a lot more depth, and I'm noting that there's quite a few questions coming in around the technicalities of the tools. I don't want to get into those now because they're often going to be specific questions that you need answering. Feel free to, my email address is going to be on the final slide. Feel free, please do reach out and ask me and ask for a chat, and we can chat through your specific questions. But the reason we wanted to talk about the tools is because it's pivotal and essential in terms of the process that we're going to talk through. To think about what tools could be available to you. And one of the key things to consider in that, particularly if you work in a larger organization, is to think about what tools can you use with your teams. So before you get into the next stage, it's worth thinking about what is your creativity loves constraint. What are your constraints at that point?
Firewalls, costs.
Exactly.
What sort of systems plug into your IT or don't?
Jackie, Idiot's Guide to Setting This Up. Feel free to reach out to me by email and we can chat, and I can be your idiot guide. So this is the process that we used in the last few weeks that we have used to turn our face-to-face training digital. And we did it. We were fortunate to have an away day booked before everything really started kicking off with COVID-19. So we were able to do this in the room, in person, but it's absolutely doable virtually with a virtual team or indeed on your own. But I would encourage you to, if you are self-employed, if you're a sort of sole trader or single consultant, I would encourage you to reach out to your network and maybe find a couple of people that you can do this with virtually, because it's creativity loves connections, as well as
bouncing off ideas from each other.
Exactly. So what tools can you use is the first question to ask. What tools are available to you? So that's a case of noodling around the internet, finding tools that you can use, checking with IT if you have to, that you can use these tools.
And we're on a lot of kind of WhatsApp groups here, and people are saying, does anyone have a tool for? Does anyone know how you? So reach out and ask people. I think, the fact that we had so many people becoming our NHS volunteer army, people are being incredibly collaborative and sharing at the moment. So they ask and you shall receive at the moment. If you want to find a tool for something, I think someone out there in your network knows it, uses it, and is able to share it with you.
Absolutely. So that's the tools. And then you need to think about what is the existing learner and customer journey. And there's a couple of things to think about here. One is touch points, but the second is outcomes. So as you go through, as you think about what do people do when they join me for a training session, or when I am engaging with them as my customer, what do I do for them and what do they do? And you really want to think as expansively as possible. No touch point is too small to include here, because what we're going to be doing later in the process is thinking, how can we create moments of magic for people along that journey? And if you miss out touch points because they seem small and irrelevant, you might miss out opportunities. So it's a case of mapping out that journey. And what we did was we had over 20 different touch points, and I certainly don't think that was all of them. No, and we actually came up with some more on the day as well. So map your existing learner or customer journey and think about as many touch points as you can. and think about what the outcomes of those are. So what's being moved forward at each touch point. And then what could it look like? So this is about idea generating on the virtual alternatives. No idea is a bad idea, of course. And the key thing is to think about how the tools intersect with the ideas that you're coming up with. So that having looked at the tools beforehand gives you a focus and gives you a golden circle, the constraints in which you can operate, because you know that if you can't do it with the tools that you can use, well, it's kind of out of scope for this activity. And then finally, what would my new learner and customer journey look like? This is where it gets really exciting. Rather than trying to map onto your old customer journey, you need to think about what does my new customer journey look like? Now that I've been really creative and come up with lots of ideas of how I can create moments of magic or utility for my customers or my learners, is there a new customer journey? And maybe, and this is why I've been saying all the way through, maybe it extends beyond just holding a webinar. So let's dig into each of these a little bit more. We've already talked about the tools, so we're going to dive straight into what does our existing customer or learner journey look like. So thinking about what I've just said and thinking about what you can see on the screen here, these are just some of the ones that we came up with the other week. What are some of the touch points in your customer journey that you can think of? And I've just seen a message come through from Frin. If my customers are really community members, what sort of things might I be mapping? Absolutely, Frin, it's a great question. And I actually know that Frin works for a church. So things that you might want to be considering there would be, for example, a weekly newsletter from the church. It would be, how do they arrive? What happens when they arrive, and how can you replicate that? What happens throughout a service, and how can you replicate those moments? Do they get any engagement from the church community through the week? And this can apply to other community groups as well. Do people see each other, visit one another? How can you replicate those sorts of things? So that's the journey you'd be thinking of for a community.
So any way that you would normally interact them on the phone, face to face, over email, etc. How can you then replicate that in a digital space and think creatively about it? So normally before we do a kickoff, we're running currently a leadership program with a team in Australia. Normally we would just send out an email the day before saying, hey guys, remember you've got a session at such and such a time, looking forward to seeing you. Whereas my colleague and I recorded a little 30-second video the other day and just said, hey guys, we're really looking forward to seeing you online tomorrow. Remember to join us on the link here. See you tomorrow. So actually, we will no longer send out an email to our clients saying, hey, we'll probably send both, hey, see you online tomorrow. We've actually used this as an opportunity to make it a bit more personal, a bit more fun, a bit more engaging.
And something else that we've done after we did this activity, and in light of the sort of environmental changes, we realised that actually we need to be communicating a bit more. So we used to do a fortnightly. Those of you who've been on our mailing list for a while will know that we used to send a fortnightly email, and then it became weekly, and now it's happening when we need it to happen. So, for example, you may well have received an email about this webinar this morning. We didn't want you to miss it. And we've always felt that we shouldn't clutter people's mailboxes, but actually we know that there's a good outcome to someone joining this webinar. So we sent an email this morning. So Graham has said, one hint, always assume that the journey starts much earlier than you think. Exactly, Graham. That's a really good point. Thank you for that. So as Graham said, start earlier than you think. Emma has said training and onboarding modules, increasing engagement. So there's some good examples of touch points there. And Emma, on that, what you might find is that if you really dig into it, you might find that there are other touch points that you can find within that sort of umbrella touch point, if you like. What other touch points can you think of on your customer or learner journeys? The questionnaires and handouts, absolutely. Handouts are a really good point, actually, because people may not have printers at home. So, and Monica, breaks is a great one. Yeah, absolutely, and coffee breaks. So just to loop around on the handouts point, that one of the things that you could potentially use questionnaires for, to come back to that earlier point, is creating a sort of virtual handout where people can fill it in as they go. And this is where you start to see the opportunities for combining different tools in order to reach a relevant learning outcome. So group discussions, questionnaires, and reflection. Group reflection is an interesting one. And one of the things that we have realized is that actually workshops need to be shorter than they ever would be if you were doing face-to-face. We run multi-day innovation boot camps, which we're not going to do a multi-day webinar, but what we're going to do is lots of small webinars over multiple weeks, you know.
And you know what, it's okay. So our strategy director of the day was running an idea generation session, and we took a coffee break, and she just muted everyone, left the Zoom on, and we all went off, had a cup of coffee and came back. And if we came back early, there was some music playing and there was an empty chair. People, again, are very forgiving at the moment and understand that everyone needs a little break and needs hydration through their sessions.
So Paul has just asked a question about virtual handouts. So a couple of ideas on that. One is that you create interactive PDFs that people can then interact with, but they need a particular piece of software called Adobe Acrobat Pro to use those. Another thing you could consider is simply sending people a Word document or a PowerPoint slide which people can type into. And another idea is to use surveys like SurveyMonkey, for example, and people will type in their details as they go. And one of the advantages of that from an L&D perspective is that you then get a qualitative output of the activity that you were doing.
Question there from Lindsay. In your experience, what's the longest virtual session? I would say 45 minutes, maximum an hour, then people start to disengage. You know, there are some informations that millennials or Gen Z actually can't keep their concentration for more than 3 minutes. So I think 45 minutes to an hour, after that you're pushing it.
And the other thing is that you should try and have some sort of engagement or something that jolts people out of just listening to your voice every 8 minutes or so. So that's why we're doing a lot of chat on this. So look, thank you everyone. We've seen some really interesting touch points coming through there. And I'm really pleased someone pointed out the idea of breaks and coffee and lunch. I mean, those things are so important. The other one I would really invite you to consider is arrivals and departures. You'll have noticed on this webinar, there was a question to welcome you, which gave you an opportunity both to find the relevant piece of technology, i.e. the chat box, but also to get you thinking and get us talking about what the content of the webinar is. And you'll see that there's something coming up as a departure as well when we get to that, but we're not there yet. So once you have once you have mapped your existing journey, you then have a whole load of potential touch points, and each of those touch points represents an opportunity area for coming up with a creative idea. So the way we have always done idea generating for as long as I've been part of this business is using idea generating templates, and we have a very happy looking Zach Curtis on the photograph there. Zach is from our team, and he was particularly proud of this idea.
He's our capability director. I believe he's online
Woohoo,
today. Woohoo, says Zach.
He's delighted that he's got a
Your
cameo.
moment has come.
So as you can see, this is a beautifully simple template. And the reason it works, there's a couple of reasons why it works. One is because it gives you focus. Mark, do you want to talk about brainstorms and rain and sun behavior?
Yeah, okay. So I think that before I do that, actually, we just talked about idea. So actually, I just wanted to be clear about what an idea is. Often when you're having what we would call traditionally idea generation sessions, you're not actually having ideas, you're having thoughts. What's really important when you're mapping out the customer journey, when you're having ideas around how you can do it digitally, or actually brainstorming any ideas going forward, is make sure you are having ideas. An idea is something tangible. An idea is something you can write down, hand to someone who wasn't there online when you were generating the nascence of that idea, and they will understand and they're able to take action, put some resource against it, build a prototype, put some cost against it, do something with it. A thought is an intention. It's very general. So we could play some sort of music when people arrived is a thought. It's not an idea. An idea is we will play It's Happy Hour at the beginning of all of our webinars to welcome people in and say it's happy hour again, whatever it might be. Very specific idea. So difference between a thought and an idea. And also, when you are collaborating with people and trying to build ideas, it's really important to understand the difference between expansive and reductive behavior. We're asking an issue that you be very expansive. You don't judge your ideas. You say, under what circumstances could this be possible? You suspend your judgment. You try and understand how it could possibly work, and then nurture that idea, as opposed to what we normally do, where we're all paid to be quite reductive, is just react to something, make an assumption about whether that idea is right or wrong, and then insist on our point of view and close someone down. So stay expansive as long as possible when you're idea generating. You will get to a point where you then judge the ideas and say which one of these actually will work in our customer journey.
Great, thanks, Mark. So you see what the template that we've got here does, and I'll be sending this to you as a PDF so that you can use it to your heart's content. What this template does is it turns what Mark just talked about around being expansive, but also focusing on one idea at a time and turning a thought into an idea. It gives you a template for doing that. And it's really simple. You give the idea a name, you describe it, and you draw it. And the reason that we draw it, of course, is because people engage in different ways. Some of us will hate the idea of having to draw it, but that's another reason to do idea generating it as more than just one person. You draw it so also so that other people will be able to engage with the idea if they are more visual in terms of their thinking. So it's a really simple tool to use. It gives you an expansive idea. It doesn't give you a fully defined idea. It is a defined idea, but it doesn't give you everything you need to make that idea happen. It gives you enough to get to the next step. I can see actually Sue has just said, do you need a music license to play music? Yes, you do. It's a really good point, Sue. And one of the things that you do at a later stage is you test the feasibility of your ideas. So you make sure that you aren't breaking any rules by playing music, etc. The other thing that you can see just on the background image here is a lot of stickers. Now this is something that we did in person. We wanted to make sure that we stayed focused on the tools that we had available to us. So every idea needed to have at least one sticker on it. And if it didn't, then it wasn't really a viable idea. So we used those stickers to keep a sense of focus on what tools we had available. And that's a really useful thing to do. It's another reason why you look at the tools before you look at the journey, before you come up with ideas, so that you are focusing on your customer or learner journey, and you're also focusing on the tools that you know are available to you.
Yeah, because at this point, you don't want to go reinventing tools. There's enough out there. If you can't deliver it through the tool suite, I would say don't deliver it that way.
Absolutely, absolutely. So why don't we? And I just wanted to show you just that when you use this resource, you get to see just how many ideas that emerge, because you're allowing yourselves to be expansive. You're allowing yourselves to come up with a top line idea, but get it to a point where it's genuinely developed. Not just a one line on a brainstorm or on a post-it note. It's something that has gone beyond just a thought to an idea. And you generate hundreds of them literally hundreds in a very short space of time. This is 10% of, well, less than 10% of what we generated on the day that we had together. And to be honest, I just got bored of putting them on the slide.
And you'll see on the bottom there, though, where we'd applied the stickers. So we went round to each of the ideas, and then we stuck stickers on saying, knowing the tools that we have available, how might this idea be enabled and brought to life for our customers through the tools that we have in our tool suite?
Yeah, and also there's a point made here about using stickers to allow you to choose the best ideas from many. Absolutely. And you can see there's a star on a few of these. So we do that as well. We call it the passionometer. Yeah. And it's just a really nice way of doing it. And that's yet another use of surveys. Like this, especially in a coaching context, it helps to generate options. Absolutely. There you go. You can already see how it maps onto your customer journey and your learner experience. I wonder how we could replicate this template and stickers idea online. Well, let me show you. So I'm going to break one of the golden rules of webinar presenting, and I'm going to open up slide editing on PowerPoint. There you go. Welcome to the behind the scenes. What I'd love to do is throw you out a question. How might we create a moment of connection during a virtual virtual break in a training session? So here we go.
So everyone's going on a coffee break.
Everyone is going on when we have workshops, we have coffee breaks. So everyone has just gone on a coffee break in a virtual context. What might you be able to do to generate a moment of connection? Because we have moments of connection when we go on coffee breaks in our workshops. So how can we replicate that?
So you're on a break. Is that the idea?
Yeah.
So let's see any ideas.
So just throw me some ideas, folks. And what we'll do is we will craft an idea. We'll crowdsource an idea. Secret Santa instructions to make making tea fun for another person.
Secret Santa.
Love it.
Nice. That's
love
nice.
It.
Like hopping.
Yeah. Ask a random non-related question. So what we do first, by the way, is you do a bit of brainstorming, and then you find an idea that really is sticky. And actually, one thing that, if you see ideas that come up that you like, feel free to mention that you do. get people to put in the chat box what biscuit they're having. I love that.
So actually, when we have our twice daily check-ins, we have a share what coffee mug you're using, which is quite nice. So we all go up. So I'm using. I'm not having a coffee mug. You'll see here. I've got a beautifully branded bottle that McDonald's gave me when I was at their Best Love conference.
Nicola, actually, funny enough, Mark, I'm going to go with that one because Nicola has just commented, ask everyone to send a picture of their favourite mug.
This is my favourite water holder. Super.
So the other thing to say, by the way, is if we were doing a full idea generating session today, we wouldn't be losing any of the ideas that have just come through. But what we do with these templates is it's really important to put one idea at a time and not let each idea become muddied. So Nicola, I'm just going to ask you a follow-up question. If we ask everyone to send a picture of their favourite mug, what do we do with that? Is it just so that we can all smile and laugh, or can we do something to build even more engagement? What else could we do on that idea? And whilst you're thinking and feel free, anyone else can contribute on that, but now we're focusing on the idea of sending a favourite mug. Oh, someone has come through and said, use Post-it notes to create fun, relevant mugs with a cartoon and share.
Oh, so you can create your own mug. I love that, Graham.
I love that. I'm going to amend the idea, right? So ask everyone to send a picture of a mug they've decorated, e.g. with Post-it notes.
I can see why you work so much for Lego, Graham. Fantastic. Lovely.
Perhaps a picture on the mug to describe how they're feeling.
Lovely.
Nice. Yeah.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah. So we could have themed days, themed breaks, like how are you feeling? Lovely. That's great because that creates a moment of connection. That's brilliant. So that absolutely does the job. Now we need to give this idea a name.
Oh, how about Me Tea?
Me Tea. Any ideas from the group?
What would we call it?
I was thinking mugshot.
Mugshot's great.
Mug love, mugshot.
Mugshot, yeah.
Go. Suki came with a mugshot.
Field tea.
Or
yes.
muggles.
Muggles!
Oh, okay. It's a toss-up between mug, shot, and muggles. The next person who comment which one you prefer, and that's the one it'll be.
Hovering over the G.
Mugshot! There you go. And then, of course, the final piece of the puzzle is drawing it. So God help me. Here we go.
That's very brave of you. Well done. Live as well.
I'm drawing a computer and I'm drawing a mug and a person with. Well, okay, look, that's meant to be there you go, that's meant to be a smile. There you go, I made it into a
I'm just checking, I've had a message to Joe that they can't see the amendments on the screen as it's stuck on a blank form. So let's just go to screen share and see.
Okay,
again, we're all learning as we go.
Yeah.
So you'll see that Joe has been filling in a template. So can you see the template now? Mugshot, describe the idea, and then draw the idea. Yay!
Good. Okay, well, that's useful for us to know. I didn't know that it would pause the share. So.
Thanks for the feedback.
Yeah,
so I support
to
use as many platforms as possible.
Yeah, there you go. And you know, one of the, and I saw someone mention the possibility of using whiteboards. And actually, you might find when you're doing this in a meeting context that a whiteboard is a much better resource to use than trying to share PowerPoint in that way. Well, there you go. That's what I was doing whilst you were all looking at me really close to the screen, wondering what the hell I was up to. There you go. So that is how you come up with ideas. And the final piece of the process that we went through was to map those ideas onto a learner and customer journey. And that learner journey might look different to the one that you had before, because you might have uncovered opportunities for doing things at different stages, and you might have found that actually some of the stages are no longer relevant. So it's about thinking through what is relevant now, and so the journey might look different. That's a really important point. That is why you don't have this pre-filled in. So what you would then do is something like what we have on the screen here. You have, this is for consulting, and we have things like project sign-off, clarifying brief, project tracking, and we developed ideas at each of these stages. And we're working that up into a program that is then going to be, hopefully rolled out with clients when and if the economy sorts itself out.
It will.
It will.
Give us 12 weeks.
And the key question on here, you'll notice that it says why. Now, why would we be asking why? Because actually, you need to know why you're doing this. You need to have an understanding of what value this idea is adding, because these ideas are going to take time and effort and potentially money to put in place. So you want to make sure that you know what the value is that it's bringing to you or to your end user or to your customer or your learner. So this is another really simple tool to use to absolutely to set up your learner journey, to get your customer journey in a virtual context better understood by yourself and by your teams. And it also helps you to sort the ideas that you've identified and developed, because not all of them are going to be good enough, or not all of them are going to be right. They're all representations of brilliant creativity, but not all of them are actually going to be the best ones that you could use. So this is where we start getting into sorting the ideas and thinking what will work really well. Mark, do you have anything to add on this?
So let's just have a look at some of the comments coming through. So great. So Graham, can I suggest that adding a simple visual curve to this will help enormously in terms of empathizing with the participant and learner? I found that everyone has hardwired as a mental tool. So great. Okay.
Cool.
Yeah, absolutely.
Brilliant.
Super.
Yeah.
Lovely. I'm conscious of time. We said we can finish at
Absolutely.
42,
Absolutely.
and people have got other calls to get on.
We stick to our time. So just a summary, really. Focus on finding the right tools for you. Map the existing learner and customer journey. Imagine what that journey could look like by coming up with ideas for each touch point and combining that with the tools that are available to you. And then create the new customer journey for your virtual delivery, whether that's your learners, your customers, or your community members. Really simple, really clear. This slide will be coming out to you as well, so that it's just really easy for you to replicate. So you've got two tools and a short, simple process to go through. Highly recommend you do it with others. And if you would like to network further with others who are trying to do similar things to you, we have a WhatsApp virtual group, so a virtual delivery group for people who are working from home, for people who are focusing on doing exactly what we've been talking about on this webinar. So easy to join. You just turn the camera on your phone and hover it over the QR code on the screen, and you'll immediately find yourself in the group. Feel free to say hello, let people know some of the tips you have about turning face-to-face into virtual. And the other thing to mention is on Mondays and Fridays at 11 a.m, we are holding a morning momentum call. So this is for people who are working from home, who feel they want to, have a bit of engagement.
I like to call it a virtual coffee morning.
Virtual coffee morning, absolutely. And also it's an opportunity to support others as well and share your tips and your ideas. So feel free. I'll keep that slide on the screen for a little longer. But that is the end of the webinar. Thank you so much for all of your amazing engagement. It's been really fun. I've enjoyed it, and you seem to all be engaged as well.
So hopefully we'll see you in our virtual delivery group. Do please join that, because we're sharing information every day. You'll hear about our upcoming webinars, and then maybe we'll see you at our momentum morning tomorrow at 11 for a coffee. Yeah. And you know what? I think we'll trial out that idea, mugshot. We'll do that tomorrow in our coffee morning. So join us and see your idea activated.
There you go. And I can see quite a lot of you have joined already. So welcome to the group. You're all in the right place. Super. And any links that have been shared, I'll make sure go into the email that we send out to everyone as well. So thanks everybody. Have a great rest of the day. Stay safe and be strong.